Good evening, guys. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Hope you're all doing well and having a good day. Very gonna have a very interesting space tonight. I'm very looking forward to this one. Managed to get Zishan on board, even though he's a busy man. He was very gracious enough to give us his time. I'm excited about this. Zishan, you having an issue, mate? DM me if you. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go.
Am I in?
Yeah, man, you're in. You're in. Good. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Good man, good man. Zishan, first of all, I am very honestly, I feel like I've got a celebrity on. I'm so honoured to have you on. I really am. I really appreciate it. I've watched a lot of your work at Speaker's Corner. I think you do a lot of good work. I think you've got the patience of a saint. You've got the patience of a saint. Um, yeah, I've watched a lot of your work, and I think I would encourage other people, whether you're Muslim or not, is irrelevant. I think there's a lot of people can learn a lot from you, Zishan. You've got in my opinion, an encyclopedia level of knowledge in regards to religion, not just in Islam, but I think in regards to Judaism and Christianity too. So I think people could learn a lot from you, and not just from an Islamic perspective, just from being a good person. You come across to be a very grounded, principled individual. And like I say, what attracted me to your video is just the way your approach, your style, the way you go about things, your polite manners, and you've got a bit of humour in there too. So I don't know, I don't want to sort of sound like I'm kissing your ass or anything, but I think yeah, I think a lot of people should, at least go and watch your work on Smile to Jan on YouTube. Give you a follow and follow your work, and let them make their own opinion. But I can't say enough good things about you. So I just want to say thank you very much, first of all, for coming on to my space. I do appreciate you giving me your time. I know you're a busy man, and if you could just give everyone a sort of little introduction about who you are and how you ended up doing what you do at Speaker's Corner, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, bro. And I'm really overwhelmed by the kind words that you've said. Truly humbled and very appreciative of the kind words that you've said. And I hope and I pray to God that I can obviously reach the level that you and the other listeners may think that I am at. So I have a YouTube channel called Smile to Jannah. For people that don't know, Smile to Jannah means smile to paradise. So Jannah is Arabic for paradise. So this whole notion of using comedy, using lightheartedness to engage in conversations, to put forth certain ideas that people may or may not find uncomfortable and get conversations going. Initially, I started it via sketches, and then I moved on to say podcasts, face to cam, and I think that's where it's somewhat stabilized now and kind of continued onwards to Speaker's Corner, and out and about. There's a bit of that happening a bit more often now. I have another channel called Smile to Jannah Extra, in which my discussions are put forward in that kind of format. Mostly it is Speaker's Corner. So yeah, in a roundabout sort of way, now it's mostly talking about political and social current affairs, with the backdrop of humor. Obviously, Islamically, there are certain boundaries of what you can and can't do with humor. For example, you shouldn't necessarily be swearing, using sexual innuendos, and kind of and putting other people down, like using jokes on the back of insulting others. So that kind of makes it very difficult when it comes to punchlines. But we do what we can, and it is what it is. But yeah, in a roundabout sort of way, that's where we are now.
Thank you, Zishan. Listen, guys, if you could do me a favour, you could just please retweet the space. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. I want to ask you a couple of questions, Zishan, and then we'll kind of get into it. What like I'm really trying to come this from like try to be more of a neutral rock. I know I've got a bit of a bias towards Muslims because I defend them like pretty much 7 days a week, right? But I'm trying to come across more of a devil's advocate kind of position
Yeah,
rather than
yeah,
just
do your thing, bro. That's why we're
Um,
here.
yeah. But like just as a Muslim, right? I think we have to start at Islam, right? We have to just as a Muslim, as a just an ordinary citizen. Forget about Samaritan, forget about everything. But just you as a Muslim in the United Kingdom. How does it make you feel when you hear in the headlines and you see all these things? And I swear in my space. Everyone knows I swear. Swearing is allowed in my space. It's just so you know, Zishan, it's all good. I swear naturally. I always say, be who you are in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but how does it make you feel as a Muslim in the United Kingdom when you see all the bullshit that's coming out as it comes out in the headlines? And just basically, you are continuously, in my opinion, you're used as scapegoats to blame you for anything and everything in regards to the UK problems. How does that make you feel as a just as a Muslim as a member of the community in the United Kingdom?
I think, to be honest, my bro, it varies from maturity and age. For example, when I was a bit younger, and when you're young, you're in primary, secondary school, it's a bubble. Then you go to another bubble, which is college, then another bubble, which is university, and every now and then you get to experience what's going on in the real world. However, you are still protected by that bubble. And I remember, of course, the first time that bubble was somewhat permeated or penetrated was around secondary school when 9/11 happened, and just seeing people's kind of reactions turn, not knowing too much about politics, not really paying attention. In fact, parents, of course, would have to force you to watch BBC News at 10, and if you did, it was a major achievement. But as we, of course, grow up, there are different people that have different kind of roles in the UK. Some people, they're just lads, you know what I mean? They just get on with their life, and it is what it is. Like, until something happens to their family, comes to their doorstep, it's not really, they don't really take it as their business. But I mean, myself, I had grown up without a father, and of course, law abiding, never, had any issues with the police, was a good boy at school and the likes. So, and then constantly when you go to the mosque, we're taught that, you know what, make sure, you are respectful to your parents, to your family, to your neighbors, to, the non-Muslims that are around you, because they learn through your akhlaq, they learn through your character. So already there is this initial bias that, you know what, we have to represent, we have to do the best that we can. So, you know what, Johnny, it becomes a bit frustrating, and it's like you're going against a tide when you've been brought up like that, and then you're still demonized as, these people want to do this to our daughters, these people are here to take over and do this and do that, because the average Muslim simply does not see that from their upbringing. Rather, they're told the exact opposite. So it's only when you start growing up and you start understanding the nature of geopolitics, that's when you realize that it is not the issue. That the issue is not with the Muslims and Islam. The issue is that we have to find a scapegoat, because if we don't, in this era of breads and circuses, what will the emperor and what will the Caesars do? And people will start focusing on how they are screwing us over. I mean, there is a reason why 1 in 5 Brits today skips a meal. Why? Because they are struggling from hand to mouth. But it's that Muslim over there, Muhammad or Abdullah, it's his fault. And what is that Muhammad or Abdullah doing? I mean, his predecessors were brought into the country, on ships anyway. The first kind of colonies or areas of the Muslims were the Indians, and they were bought via the East India Company, which went to India with the sole intention, their intention pretty much crystallized after they saw how impressionable and how, it was easy for them to take over. Thereafter, they would employ these Indian Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, whoever it be, to then come on these ships. And then, they started, when they were in the tens and thousands, then they started settling here in the UK. Why? Because they had to wait for their next shipment. The next time they would be, called back on the ship. So if it's not that, it was the Napoleonic Wars. If it's not that, again, it was Muslims on ships. 1 in 5 of the Muslims that were on the ships were in World War I. So again, this is something that really gets taken out of the frame. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, Johnny, is because one can only truly understand the role and the scapegoated nature of Muslims and Islam when they have a somewhat understanding of history. And what I mentioned is not something that's disputed. You can see the first Muslims. It's actually a BBC article, in fact. Yeah, yes, there have been books written on this, but for people that don't really like reading, that's somewhere for you to begin. But when growing up and not knowing, because of course we are taught history from a very Eurocentric point of view, not really told that from the 4th to the 5th century, yes, you had the Greeks, which are, their history is mentioned significantly, but from the 5th to say the 14th, 15th century, that's a good 10 centuries. Yeah, the Islamic civilization flourished, be it the Ottomans, be it the Mughals in India, be it the Persians in Iran and the likes. So, and the impact that they had on Europe is by and large significantly censored. And because of that censorship, when we hear and when I heard when 9/11 happened, it is your fault. You brownie Muslim, it's your fault, your people, you did it. Why? And then the question started, why do you wear the hijab? Why do you grow the beard? Why do you pray? Why this? Why that? And then I started paying attention to, because when the teacher started mentioning it, when it was mentioned in the media, I was getting it. In English, there's a term like English literature, it's called immersion. When you're just immersed from all aspects, that I started believing it to be true. But then when I started hearing the alternative media, that's when I realized how badly I had been duped. And my fellow brethren had been duped as well, because then we were on the defensive thinking, you know what, maybe it is us, maybe it is Islam. And if it is Islam, maybe we should leave it. There's no point staying with something that is inherently evil and causing such atrocities. But it is only when you start reading and understanding, and that's why that is so important, because you won't find these documentaries on Netflix, you won't find on Amazon Prime, you won't find these books in Waterstones and in W.H. Smith. These are alternative books, and they will be the secondary reading material that you will find in universities. And then and only then can you truly understand, when you take a step back and you look at history holistically, then and only then you realize that the term that you used, scapegoat, has not only been used for Muslims, it's been used in the past for, there's a really good book in which it enumerates that initially there was actually a group called the Bavarian Illuminati. Thereafter, it was the Catholics. Thereafter, it was the Jews, then the blacks. And now, like my black neighbor said to me, he was laughing and he said, mate, it's just your turn now. That's what it is. There was a time it was our turn, but now the blame has been shifted onto you. And that's what some black comedians, they laugh and they say that, you know what, that's literally the case. Now we are no longer, I think Dave Chappelle said this in one of his stand-ups, that he was on a plane and something was happening, and then he realized that the white people were looking past them and looking towards the ethnics. And unfortunately and sadly, that's the reality, and that's what's become of it. And they understand that the average layman does not have the time to sit down and look through the alternative sources, because of the system that we have, the economic system. We are literally, working from morning to evening, and then we have only but a few hours in the day, and then we have to now divide that amongst family, amongst leisure. Who's going to be sitting there reading a book by William Bloom? you know what I mean? Or Professor Pape or Noam Chomsky. You simply don't have the time to be sitting and learning about this. It's much easier to play the blame game. In fact, we do this in our private lives as well. When there's something that's happened at work, we will project onto our family members. Why? Because it's just easier. They're around. You can't, say this to your boss. So what you'll do is you'll just say this to the people at home, the weaker, the people that depend upon you, unfortunately and sadly. So, this is the sad reality of where we are at this moment in time, Johnny.
Thank you for that. can't disagree with anything you've said. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of who I am first, and but then just to let everyone know, guys, we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of the conversation, but I just want to like warm both of us up and sort of lay the foundations, if you will, and so both understand where we're coming from. So just for transparency, Zishan, yeah,
Yeah.
I did 10 years in the army. I've been to Iraq twice. Went to Afghanistan once. Grew up in a household where using the P word was just normalized, right, by my dad. My dad was racist growing up. He's not now, thank God, because I've managed to turn him around with my own life experience. But growing up, my dad and my mum had me believing that using the P word was totally fine, like it was normal. It was just like another word, right? It wasn't a derogatory term. Um, so I grew up with this mindset that I can use the P word when I'm speaking to Pakistanis, right? Obviously, I don't do that anymore. I'm 42 now. I'm not like I was a child anymore. But I grew up with that mindset that using the P word is fine. That the Pakistanis I'm not going to go into you can use your imagination if you know what I'm saying. I don't want to start sounding offensive towards people. Um, then I joined army, and as I came across Pakistanis and Indians and Sikhs and Gurkhas and a diverse group of people that used to serve in the British Army, went all over the world, gained life experience. And whenever I talk about the British Army, people kind of get annoyed. I understand why, but there's certain aspects of the British Army that I'm proud of, and there's certain aspects of the British Army I'm ashamed of. For example, going to Iraq, we should never have been there. I've apologised to um, the Iraqi people and the Muslims that I've come across several times because they deserve an apology. Because whether I like it or not, I have a certain level of culpability for going there. Right, I'm part of a big chain. Regardless of how small or big my link was, I was still part of that chain. So I can't absolve myself of all responsibility. So I was in Iraq, I was in Afghanistan. Um, but as I got older, I started to realise, like, especially one of the things that I was proud of about the British Army was it teaches the Army core values about like respect for others, loyalty, integrity, moral courage, compassion, all these things that whether you're in army or not, a lot of these are sort of basically that I would consider good human values for us all to have. Yeah, whether you're a soldier, whether you're a civilian, if you can go through your life with having these sorts of values and this sort of outlook, you won't go far wrong. So I did take some goodness from the British Army, but I'm ashamed for going to Afghanistan and going to Iraq. We should never have been there. Um, but I came out of the British Army with a different mindset to what I went in with. So again, I served with people with brown skin in the British Army. So when I went home after the British Army and I realised like the world is not the place that I thought it was, and even more so when I get to Palestine, it was Palestine really that really opened my eyes to the ugliness of the world, and it's Palestine that absolutely flipped my mindset on its head completely. My experience in the British Army started to turn it, but it was what I came across in regards to Palestine that completely did. I did a 180, a total 180. That's why I do what I do now. And I get abused off people that look like me, white Caucasian males and females, and I don't give a shit. I don't care. I get abused 24/7. But I will not stop telling the truth. I don't care how many friends I lose, how many followers I lose, what abuse I get. I have to tell the truth. It's as simple as that. Especially when I've done the research that's required on Palestine, and it's made me see the world from a completely different lens. Um, so I grow up with this mindset that using the P word is fine. But what when I look back at my life now, what the key thing that's missing is it's the lack of education, Zishan. It's the lack of education, right? So just going on to the point that you mentioned there, Zishan, if you take your education or your news from mainstream sources, yeah, you're gonna grow up with the mindset like you're likely gonna grow up with the mindset that I had, right? Because the mainstream media portray Muslims and ethnic minorities as the big bad wolf, the boogeyman. They're the bad guys. The Quran is the book of the devil. Islam is not. If you, is Islam is basically all of the followers of Satan follow Islam. All this absolute fucking bullshit that I used to believe. I used to believe this shit. And I look back at my younger self now, I'm like, you absolute idiot. But again, as a young man, finding my way in this world, you have to, life is a learning curve, right? As Ishan, and you have to realize what's true and realize what's fucking fiction or bullshit and stay away from that. And then what brings, when I started to do my research on Palestine, and I really got into the nuts and bolts of how this world really works, I started to see just how badly I've been lied to all my life. I've literally been lied. I'm not saying my parents have lied to me, but from a mainstream narrative, they have literally spent the last 2 decades, or I suppose 3 decades, indoctrinating me to believe that Muslims and Islam is completely incompatible with Western society. It's completely the antithesis of good-natured people. It's like they paint this picture that Islam is literally all it should be only be followed by Satan's followers, right? That's basically. I'm trying to give you a crude explanation, a crude depiction of what, in my opinion, what mainstream media is doing to us all. Now, I've got 2 children now. My daughter was born 4 weeks ago this Thursday, I've got a 9-year-old son. One thing that I've learned from my parents is that I don't want my children to grow up with the same hatred in their heart that I had, or the same ignorance in their heart that I had when I grew up. That it's okay to abuse brown people, or Pakistanis, and call them the P word. My children will not be learning that behaviour from me. That will not be happening. And I made it clear to my dad when I came back from army, especially when I had my your eldest son. I made it clear to my dad, if you're going to carry on using that language, you're not going to see your grandson. He's not going to be around, my son is not going to be around that language. And I'm not here to say that Muslims are perfect, Zishan, because nobody's perfect. Muslims aren't perfect, Sikhs aren't perfect, Christians aren't perfect, atheists, fat people, skinny people, long people, short people, gay, straight, like, regardless of what category of people you want to look at, no one's perfect. We've all got rapists, paedophiles, murderers, bank robbers, car thieves, cyber, but all every type of crime you can think of. Nobody gets away with it. We've all got them, all of us. So I said to my dad, like, if you want to if you want to be like spending more time with your grandson, you need to cut your language out, because I'm not having it. Because I'm not having him growing up in with the same ignorance and blind hatred in his heart that I had. And I had to get away from my parents. I'm not saying my parents were bad parents, because they're not. They gave me and my brother everything, and I'm very grateful for what they've done. But again, my parents weren't perfect, and this is one of their mistakes. This is one of their flaws, not teaching my brother and me the right way. Do you know what I'm saying? The irony in this, I said this to my dad, like, you're very quick to shit on. It doesn't anymore. Thank God it doesn't anymore, right? It doesn't anymore, and I'm proud of him for that. But 10 years ago, he's very quick to shit on Pakistanis, but for 25 years, my mum used to go out and piss right a weekend, and it was a Pakistani that would bring my mum home, make sure my mum got in the house safely, and make sure my mum's door was locked and post the key through the letterbox so nobody could get in. A Pakistani did that for 25. Not unless there was a taxi firm called A1 Ziggy's in Halifax, right? An A-Star, two taxi firms, A-Star and A1 Ziggy's. And for 25 years, they made sure every week that my mum got home, they walked her into her own house and they locked the door and they posted the key through the letterbox, and they made sure that no harm came to my mum. These are the bad Pakistanis. These are the bad Muslims, right? And I have to remind my dad. I have to remind my dad of this. Like, not anymore, but there was a time where I had to remind him of this. Like, these people that you're calling these derogatory names, they made sure that my mother, your wife, got home every weekend safely. Yeah, and they're same people that you go to the curry house at Saturday, go to Ziggy's curry house in Halifax, it's still running now, I believe. You go to his curry house on a Saturday, and you eating his food. But at the same time, you're talking shit behind his back. Not necessarily him directly, but you're talking about his people in such a derogatory manner, and it's wrong. And I had to really point this out to my dad and explain to him, you've got to stop this. We have to you have to mature as a person and realize, like, that there's a better way to look at people. There's a better way to treat people. So, I'm kind of, in a way, I'm kind of glad my dad did what he did to me, because it made me see things from a different perspective, maybe more clearer. But again, I am proud of my dad. He's not the same person anymore. He doesn't look at Pakistanis or Muslims the same way, and I am grateful for that. Whether he means it in his heart, I don't know, but I can only go by what he's telling me. So, yeah. So the point I'm making here is, Isham, there's a significant lack of actual, real education getting put across to children about people that look differently to you, people that may dress differently to you, people that pray 5 times a day. Like, there's this current running narrative that Muslims can't assimilate to society. Muslims are they want to take over the UK. All this fucking bullshit. It starts to, I can feel myself getting angry. It really winds me up. But yeah, I've said quite a lot there, Zishan. But I think the point I'm making here is there's a severe lack of actual education and understanding from my side, or people that look like me, about about the Quran, about the religion, about Islam. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely, for sure, for sure. And yeah, firstly, congratulations on having your little one. I I always make an inappropriate joke whenever somebody kind of congratulates. When someone congratulated me for my first one, I said, "At least I know it works." You know what I mean? Everything is in working order, and there's no
Never been
blank.
no doubt there. There's never been no doubt there.
There's no blanks being fired. It's it's all in good shape. So yeah, oh for sure, for 100%. I mean, and I appreciate your candor, and I appreciate your honesty and your passion as well for somebody that has, and I don't think many people really truly understand where you're coming from, which is, I mean, the word trauma gets thrown around a lot, but for somebody that has obviously seen loss of life and has been on the ground and sitting with people, certain people of certain ethnicities having their back, being sleep deprived and, being in truly harsh situations, it really makes a person, find their self, or to know thyself, because it is only in the depths of despair that a person will start questioning all sorts of things that they probably would not be questioning if everything is hunky-dory. So yeah, for sure, and obviously that's much appreciated. And the thing is, you're absolutely right, a lack of education, it is such a big issue. In fact, if I was to tell your listeners about just a few things that they probably will be, very surprised about, which is just the influence that Islam has, rather than seeing this as an entity. I think one of the conservatives said, pertaining when this whole, I think it was the grooming thing or something else that was happening, and they were kind of referring to the group as the aliens, or people of an alien kind of culture. Well, I don't really remember it being an alien culture, especially if you look in the 16th century. In England, you had Queen Elizabeth I, and Queen Elizabeth I, this is in 16th century. Now, she was I think she was the only surviving child of the infamous Henry VIII, and of course, we all know what her father did, and because of that, the Catholics were on her back, and to such a extent that they were trying to topple her. So you had the Catholics from within that were trying to topple her, and then she was worried about Spain helping, and obviously they had control over the Netherlands, so it was Spain and the Netherlands that were also, she thought that they could, attack at any moment. And it was at that time, Johnny, that what she chose to do was she chose to reach out to the Islamic empires. You had the Mughals, you had the Ottomans, you had the Persians, to such a degree that there was back and forth. Brits were actively going and staying and benefiting from the Ottoman Empire, and you had some, for example, the king of Morocco and his people, they had come and they were staying for months on end here in the UK. So there was a sharing of culture as well, and there was a sharing of values, because again, she was Protestant, and of course there are certain differences between Protestants and Catholics, and she felt more of an alliance with the Muslims at that time, and they did assist and they helped for as long as she was alive. And there was a lot of back and forth, and she it's on record that she said a lot of positive things about the Islamic Empire, and there are BBC articles and numerous and copious books written on how the Brits viewed Muslims that were staying in the UK, and in fact vice versa, the Brits that were actually in the Ottoman Empire actually found more peace and felt more safe, because of course you had the Inquisitions happening here in Europe. And for those people that don't know, you had the Catholic Church that was imprisoning and killing people that they deemed to be blasphemous, that were going against the kind of mainstream narrative of the Catholic Church. So bearing that in mind, a lot of Brits won't know this. They won't know that again, you had a coin And this coin, if I'm not mistaken, is dated to the 8th century. And in the 8th century, in the Midlands, there was, yes, it was indeed the 8th century. And in the Midlands, there was a king called Offa. And if you research this, you'll find this in the museum also, that the coin in the 8th century in the Midlands actually had the Islamic declaration of faith on there, which is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Yeah, that there is none worthy of worship besides Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. A lot of people don't know this. Why? Because of the influence of the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, they were very influential. So again, the currencies for international trade, they were mimicked. I think that particularly was mimicked from the Caliph Al-Mansur. So a lot of people don't really realize how much Islam is actually interwoven in British culture and British civilization. And not only that, even if you look into the United States, and this is where a lot of people get taken aback, because this is something that even members of Congress don't know. It's only when their attention is brought to this fact, it's only then that they actually realize this. And what they realize, if you look, for example, if you do ever get a chance to go to the US Supreme Court, not as a defendant, hopefully as a tourist, then you will see that there are 18 statues above, because the United States is saying that their law is extracted from these 18 individuals. And lo and behold, one of those statues is of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who is holding the Quran. And this is in the US Supreme Court, and the United States is, quote unquote, the leader of the free world. Whether somebody likes it or not, that is the case. So that's one thing people don't know. Another thing a lot of people don't know, the US Library of Congress. Again, if you look above, there is a dome, and in the dome there is, what it says is, there's a number of pictures there, and then it says the name of the country or civilization, and underneath it says from what they have got from that civilization. And if you look closely, after Rome it says Islam, and for Islam it says physics, science. So science was something that, again, the West and America in particular has highlighted that they have got from the Islamic world. And the third famous building in the United States, if you ever get a chance to go, is the US Capitol Hill. And again, if you look there, right before Thomas Jefferson, you will see Suleiman the Magnificent. Again, somebody from the Islamic world. So the Islamic world has had definitely an impact on not only the culture, but the politics, the economy, the law, the science, to such a degree that Thomas Jefferson, 11 years before the Declaration of Independence, he had a copy of the Quran. And he looked through the copy of the Quran. And he in turn was influenced by John Locke, and John Locke was influenced by Ibn Tufayl. So somebody that is an integral, he was one of the early presidents of the United States, and he had a copy of the Quran. Not only that, Isaac Newton. Again, he is somebody that when you go to Cambridge University, there is a statue erected for his commemorance. And his teacher was somebody called Isaac Barrow. And Isaac Barrow studied calculus in Turkey. And he read the books of At-Tusi and Ibn Hayyam. And not only that, when you look at whether it's Adam Smith, they praised the peaceful environment that Islam gave for not only the people that were living under it, but also for the sciences. So you had Adam Smith. Montesquieu, one of the founders of democracy, said that as well. And for people that are still skeptical, even here in the UK, if you look at Oxford and Cambridge University, initially they were seminaries. Yeah, for those people that don't know, just mere Bible schools. And then the first non-religious department that they had in, if I'm not mistaken, 1631 and 1632, 1631 for Oxford and 1632 for Cambridge, the first department was the Department of Arabic. Why? Because they had to know, and they utilized the Arabic language to translate the stuff from there, because whether you like it or not, the Muslim civilization was in between. You had the Greeks on one side, and then you had the Renaissance and the Enlightenment on the other side. So you simply cannot disregard 10 centuries of Islamic influence from, even if you take it one step forward, the 16th and 17th century, if you look, there are at least 50 references to the Islamic world in works like Shakespeare's Othello, The Merchant of Venice, and Andronicus. Yeah, to such a degree that even if we look at certain words that we have, in Arabic, normally you have the prefix al, yeah, al, then dash, and then something else. So al-jabra, yeah, al-jabra comes from the word al-jabr wal-muqabila, which was the book of al-Khawarizmi. So that's how you get the word al-jabra. Yeah. It's actually crazy, bro. Even algorithm comes from the word algorithmi. Algorithmi is the Latinized version of al-Khawarizmi. And again, these things that I'm telling you, these things are undisputed. Of course, there will be certain disputed things, but I'm just even ironically, the word alcohol comes from the word alcohol. Alcohol is a black powder, antimony rather, and then of course it was changed. A bungalow comes from the Urdu Hindi word bangla. Yeah, sugar comes from the word sukar, and even today when we say, oh, he's a media mogul, what's mogul? Well, mogul is a slightly changed version of the word Mughal, and the Mughal Empire of the subcontinent, the Muslim empire of the Mughals. Yeah, that's where this term again comes from. So even the word blighty, which a lot of these nationalists love using, blighty, and blighty is again from Hindustan, yeah, the Indian subcontinent. They would call the colonizers Valatis. Yeah, Valati became Balaiti. So there's so much. And for people that obviously want to know this stuff further, there's a very good book called 1001 Inventions of Muslim Civilization. I suggest everybody flicks through this book and has this book, because 10 centuries is a long time, and people that have shaped us, contributed to us, and today are being demonized. Like Johnny has very well said, we don't want our children to be amongst the uneducated masses, because a lot of people don't know. Even when it comes to Christianity, Muslims, it is, if for a Muslim to insult Jesus, that's kufr, like that's disbelief. You know what I mean? So for us, we will say Jesus, peace be upon him. Muhammad, peace be upon him. Moses, peace be upon him. We call our children Isa, which is Arabic for Jesus. We call our daughters Maryam, which is actually, although it's seen as the Arabic for Mary, but Maryam is actually Aramaic. So we say Maryam just like Jesus would have said Maryam as well. And that's why there was, Johnny, you probably saw that clip of Bear Grylls who was talking about Mary, the Palestinian, and you had that whole drama kick off and Bear Grylls had to retract and apologize. But he also mentioned Maryam as well. So a lot of people don't understand, and they actually don't know the closeness of Islam and Christianity. And I'm sure we're gonna go into how there are certain groups and certain powers that are indeed trying to drive a wedge between these two uh, behemoths, yeah, these giant groups. Because I mean, this concept of divide and conquer, it's something that's been used for time immemorial. And just, before, I bring you back in, I wanted to mention, just in case people don't know, Jesus's name is actually mentioned by name. He's mentioned more times in the Quran than the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Mary is mentioned 18 times in the Bible, but in the Quran she's mentioned 32 times. Mary, in fact, has a whole chapter named after her, but not a single Bible book has been named after her. As Muslims, we believe in the miraculous birth of Jesus. We believe that he was the Messiah, the anointed and the chosen one. We believe he was the mightiest messengers of God. So there is more uniting us than dividing us, and I absolutely agree with your sentiment that people are taking advantage of our ignorance and our busy nature. Why? Because of the economic system that we're in, that many people don't have the luxury to be sitting on Spaces and the likes, and listening to two wonderful people, yourself and myself, obviously talking and dropping gems, frankly. But it is what it is. It is what it is.
Thank you for that, Zishan. I knew you weren't going to disappoint people. I'm already getting nice messages from people about yourself, which I expected. I don't know if you know this, but you have got a fan base, believe it or not, and you deserve it. To be fair, you deserve it. You're a very knowledgeable man, and I actually think you're quite funny as well. I'm not going to keep going because people think I'm kissing your ass, and I'm really not trying to do that. All right, so I'll stop there. But so we're going to talk about the Quran in a second, right? But I wanted to try and break this mold of this, because there's two problems, Zishan. There's a lack of there's ignorance, yeah, but there's also arrogance. There's a lot of arrogance. People that want to speak about Islam, and again, I've never claimed to be an expert on Islam or Islamic teachings. I've never claimed to be a teacher. I am a very, very beginner stroke novice stage, right? And I'm very honest about that. But I am keen to learn, right? So I'm reading the Quran. I'm not religious per se, but recently, because of my daughter and the things that I've been going through with my daughter in hospital, I do now believe in God. In fact, I'll share this story with you, and I think you'd appreciate this. So, my daughter was born on the 30th of January with a lot of health complications. I'm not going to go into them, but I'm going to one of them. Was born with a lot of health complications. One of them being, oh, sorry, so we thought, was her eyesight. The doctors came round initially, checked my daughter's eyesight, and they were very concerned that her eyes weren't developed, and they were concerned that she might be blind. Obviously, when my daughter was like 2 or 3 days old, this kind of news for me and my girlfriend Jenna was extremely difficult for us to take, and I was I just cried my eyes out. I don't say it with shame. That would break any man to hear that news, right? Anyway, she's about a week to 10 days old, right? And she'd been struggling to really open her left eye. I thought it was just a lazy eye, but it was clearly that we thought, there is some level of eye problem, right? Anyway, this some of my followers know this story because I shared it with them. I think it was last week. But I thought we definitely identified that there was some sort of problem with her eyes. Anyway, we got this Catholic priest came round. He came round and he read a prayer for my daughter, which was really nice actually. It definitely brought me closer to God. Because I'd up to this point of the story, I did not believe in God. I was much more of an energy stroke, karma sort of person. Like, what you put out in the world, you'll get back. So if you're a good person, good things will happen to you. But I do now officially believe in God, and this is why. Anyway, this Church of England reverend came round, right? Now, as I said, up to this point, my daughter had been really struggling to open up her eyes, especially her left eye. It was almost just closed. And it was becoming a bit of a concern for me and Jenna. Anyway, this Church of England reverend came round, right? He blessed her, got his oil out, and he blessed her, commended her to God. and he said this lovely prayer. It brought me and Jenny. We were both crying. Like, there were happy tears, right? It was a very poignant moment for us. And then when he left, all of a sudden my daughter's eyes opened. It was weird. It was very weird. All of a sudden, this Church of England reverend comes round after this Catholic priest. They both blessed her. Sorry, the Catholic priest just read a prayer, but the Church of England reverend, he actually blessed her. He got his oil out. He did the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, and everything. Read out a lovely prayer for her. And then when he left, all of a sudden my daughter's eyes opened. And me and Jenny were brought to tears, happy tears, like, we can't believe what's happened. And I said, there's no way that's a coincidence. I said to Jenny, there's no way that can be a coincidence. All this time she's been struggling to open her eyes, and all of a sudden her eyes are wide open. I thought it was a miracle, right? Anyway, I went back to work because I work away Sunday to Friday, right? I went back to work. And I think it got to about Wednesday or Thursday midweek, right? I get a phone call off Jenny. Jenny says, "You're not going to believe what's just happened." She said, "What?" She said, "Well, we've had like another 2 or 3 days of my daughter. And I won't repeat her name on space because I'm not going to have these trolls get hold of my daughter's name. That's the only reason. Ziad knows the name, but Ziad's like a brother to me, so I trust him. But I'm not repeating my daughter's name just because I don't want trolls to get hold of my daughter's name and use that against me.
Yeah, that's a good choice, bro.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I just refer to her as my daughter.
Mm.
But anyway, 2 or 3 days later, right? So this Church of England reverend comes round to see my daughter again, right? I get a phone call off Jenny. Jenny says, "You never guess what's happened." She went, "What?" She went, "Remember I've been telling you that our daughter's been struggling to open her eyes again." I went, "Yeah." She went, "That Church of England." He came round specifically to see my daughter. He only came into that particular ward to see my daughter. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't see other people's children, by the way. I'm not saying that. I'm just explaining what happened. Anyway, he came round just to see our daughter. And she says, "You never guess what happened." She goes, "What?" She goes, "When he came over and looked over her, she opened her eyes again." And I said, "There's no way that just can't be a coincidence." I said, "It cannot be a coincidence that both times this man's come round by my daughter, and both times she's opened her eyes. Her eyes have now been opened ever since." And that made me a genuine believer in God. I'm like, that has to be God's work. It has to be God's work. Because up to that point, she weren't open her eyes, and we was, like I say, the actual the eye people, the eye doctors or nurses, whatever they were, the eye technicians. It was them that came around and says, "We think they've got a problem with their eyes." So they'd already sort of gave a preliminary diagnosis that she was going to have a problem with her eyes. So when this Church of England reverend came round, and the second time nailed it for me. It was the second time that absolutely nailed it for me. I thought there's no way that's a coincidence. That the second time this guy comes round, and he comes in specifically to see our daughter, and my daughter's eyes have now been wide open ever since. And then the eye technicians came round after and they checked her eyes, and my daughter's eyes are fine. They're a little bit smaller than the typical baby, but her eyesight's fine. They're a little bit smaller, but she can see everything like any other child. And I said to Jenny, I says, that's got to be like God's touch. It has to be. I says, I can't ignore that. I cannot ignore this. So in my opinion, I genuinely, I think God exists now. I think that was God's work. I think God blessed my daughter that day, and now her eyes are working fine. There's just some things sometimes, in my opinion, Zishan, there's just some things that happen in your life that you cannot ignore. I can't ignore that. So now I do believe in God. I officially do believe in God. I've been believing in God now for about 10 days. So I'm not saying I'm religious, like I'm not got to church every weekend, but I definitely officially believe in God. But it brings back to me. So I'm explaining that to explain this, right? People talk about Islam and they talk about the Quran, right? From a place of arrogance. A lot of them, right? They said they want the UK to go back to being this quote unquote Christian nation, right? And they'll put Christianity on this pedestal, right? And again, I'm not trying to speak disparagingly about anybody's religion. I'm just giving you the facts of how these situations have unfolded. And a lot of you people in my audience, you'll agree with what I'm saying, right? So they put Christianity on this pedestal, right? It's right. It's above Judaism. It's definitely above Islam, according to these people, right? And they want the UK to return back to these Christian values, right? Today I've just finished off watching. There's a 3-hour film called The Message. It's about basically the life story of your Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? And about his early struggles with the wars in Badia and as it Hood, I think it is. And I've got to about last 5 minutes before I started the space. So I didn't want to be late for you, so I'll watch the last 5 minutes later on. But from reading the Quran, from speaking to lovely people like Ziad, like Arya, other Muslims that I respect, from watching your videos, watching a lot of your videos, And I say, reading the Quran for myself, I really want to break the chain, break the mold of this place of ignorance and us being sort of force fed this information from mainstream media that Muslims and Islam is a big bad wolf, right? And I says, you know what, sod this, right? I said, I have a platform which I'm very grateful for, but I have to use my platform with responsibility. Whether it's talking about Palestine, whether it's exposing Israel, whether it's trying to be an advocate for Islam and Muslim. And I'm not Muslim, and I'm not got no aspirations to become Muslim. But again, I see Muslims as they get a real rough time in the UK, and they get blamed for everything. And I'm like, this is wrong. So because I've got the platform that I've got, I felt like I had some sort of moral duty to at least bring a much more balanced argument to the discussion, rather than this heavily weighted side that Muslims are bad and Muslims don't assimilate and the Quran's bad and all this derogatory shit that's said about Muslims, right? So I've read five. I'm on chapter 5 of the Quran. I admit I'm finding some parts hard to understand, but I'm at least trying, right? I've watched the message today, and what the theme, especially from the film, the film, the message. What I'm getting from the film is, it's about, it's about peace. Even though there's fighting within the film, the message, it's very clear in the film that if peace is offered, you stop fighting. If peace is offered, you stop fighting. It also explains in the film that there's no compulsion religion, which I've read that in the Quran too. And just the picture that I'm gleaning from this for myself, Zishan, and from people like you with your knowledge is Islam is extremely misunderstood. It's extremely misunderstood, and I feel like people have this arrogance to speak about Muslims, about Islam, with some that like they've got this like some level of authority from an educational perspective to say, you know, Islam represents X, Y, Z. Islam means this. Muslims are like I'm thinking like, and I'm sat there thinking, as a white British man, I'm looking thinking, you're still held down by these shackles of lies that I used to be held down by. But I got the key, I unlocked the padlock, and I broke free from them, right? But I can see people, they're still held down by these lies, right? I see these lies that I literally see, they're like shackles and they hold you down, they're holding you back. You need to break free from these shackles, and first of all, you need to have a wish to want to seek the truth. You have to have a wish to want to gain broaden your understanding of the knowledge. And again, that doesn't mean that I'm suddenly a Muslim simp. It just means that I understand that the dynamic in this world, Zishan, is we have to live together. Yeah, we have to be able to play football together, work together, eat together, walk down the street by each other. We have to be able to do these things, do sports together, go to college together, universities together, go to cinemas together. There's places in the society where we have to be able to coexist. It's unavoidable. We have to be able to be in a room where I don't want to kill you and you don't want to kill me, right? So I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and break this mold, and I'm going to educate myself so that I know that I'm not being lied to anymore. And the reality versus the mainstream media um, narrative, in my opinion, that there's a lot of. I think it's completely flawed. I really do think it's completely flawed. It's not an accurate representation of Islam or Muslims. As I said, if you go through if you've been through your life as a white man or a white woman, or a non-Muslim person, right? I think you would find that more often than not, your interactions with Muslims would have been probably, either neutral or positive. I'm not saying that you've not had no bad experiences, but again, this narrative from 9/11, Zishan, where obviously 9/11 happened, and overnight everyone turned against Muslims and Islam, right? The whole Western world turned against Islam like that. It was like turning the light off. It just like that, instant gone. And when I try to speak to people about Islam, and again, I'm not an expert, but I do have a decent level of knowledge to be able to speak about it objectively. I believe that, right? I mean, my followers tell me that anyway. And I just try to educate people, say, look, like, just open your eyes a little bit and just like stop listening to the Tommy Robinsons of this world, and just, if you don't want to believe me, at least have the some moral courage and just seek the truth out yourself and try and even if I point you in that direction, maybe you go expose me as a liar. Maybe I'm lying. I'm not lying, but you get the point. Like, go seek the truth out for yourself and learn a bit more for yourself so that you understand the realities of Muslims and how they live. Yes, they dress differently. Yes, they pray 5 times a day. Yes, they eat halal meat. Yes, the women wear the niqab, or the niqab, and the I forgot what the one's called. It escapes me.
The hijab.
Thank you, the hijab. Yes, they have a way of life that's different to me, but that doesn't mean that they're bad people. And I've said quite a lot there, Sishan, but yeah, I feel like I have a responsibility with my platform, and you do with your platform, to try and educate people that Islam is not this ugly, evil book or religion that mainstream media has made you believe. What would you say to all that, Zishan?
I'd say absolutely, and the numbers definitely support what you've said. In fact, even according to Georgia State University, a study that they did, they said that Muslim terrorists get 4.5 times more coverage than non-Muslims. In fact, according to the MCB, 60% of the articles from 2018 to 2019 showed Muslims and Islam in a negative light. That's 48,000 articles, and that was more specifically the Center for Media Monitoring. When the reality, Johnny, is that when you actually look at the figures, which again won't be brandished and won't be told to everybody, there was in fact there was a Gallup poll, and this Gallup poll said that you had people from all different backgrounds that were asked, is it okay to ever kill innocent people? And by and large, the majority of the faith group, with a whopping, I think it was 89% that said no, you cannot, were actually Muslims and, well, people that adhere to Islam. So when you bear these things in mind, then what you say is absolutely correct. And by and large, there is a severe amount of gaslighting that's taken place. Mark Curtis calls it a lying by omission in his book. And that's what it is. What you do is you just omit certain things to paint a certain narrative, just like they did with Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, now it's pretty much understood. Historians now, I mean, a People's History of America, Howard Zen mentions this, and that's a secondary reading resource in universities, in which people like Christopher Columbus and the likes, they went there, they raped, they pillaged, and the likes. They weren't good people. However, the media, sorry, at that time, the Americans wanted a good relationship with Italy, therefore they propped him up just so they could have good relations with Italy. When in reality, if we actually look at certain statistics from the years 0 to 2008, there was a comparative quantitative study that was done, and this can be found in War and Peace in America, sorry, War and Peace in Islam, which I recommend people to don't just take my word for it. Go and check this yourself. The number one religious group that has taken the most lives, under the guise of their religion, with a whopping 178 million, have been Christianity. Number two are anti-theists, which with a whopping 124 million. Number three, not Islam. Number four, not Islam. Number five, not Islam. Islam comes at number six with 31 million. So we don't get any of the medals. No gold, no silver, no bronze. We get a runner up medal. However, the way it's perceived through the Georgia State University, it gets extrapolated, and certain news based upon certain words that get used. For example, you're probably well aware, just a few weeks ago, I think the biggest mass shooting that took place in Sweden. Initially, you could see in the comments saying which Abdul has done it, which Mohammed has done this. Then they found out, oh, it was a white Swedish national who went in there and shot up Syrians and people that had come from abroad that were actually learning the lingo, were learning Swedish, were trying to integrate within the society. What happened to them? They caught a bullet to the brain. So when we see that, and we're seeing other people that have, like Dylan Roof. I posted this on my I think community feed on YouTube as well. Dylan Roof was somebody that went to a church, predominantly black church, and shot them all up on the way to the station. He said, I'm hungry, and the police casually took him for a complimentary Burger King meal. This is something that's absolutely unheard of when it comes to somebody who is a color other than white. In fact, even if you are white as well, but you're a Muslim, you will still be not afforded any kind of background. This is what radicalized them. In fact, the Swedish guy, they said, "Oh, he's a loner." He didn't. Even Axel Ruda Cabana, who killed two British girls, because of whom the riots materialized here. After they found out he was a Christian and his parents were churchgoers, oh, he was a loner. He was he just kept to himself. Even neighbors are saying he was a bit of a weirdo. The guy who shot up a mosque in New Zealand, yeah, he was labeled as a gunman rather than a terrorist. And yeah, I think the Daily Mail on the front page, the word angelic was there. So this is how people that are non-Muslims get put and brought forth in front of the public. But when it comes to Muslims, the word terrorist is used by default. And you've probably seen that classic Family Guy meme where you've got, those colors there, and white, say, oh, mentally ill, a dark brown, yeah, definitely a terrorist, and the like. So this is definitely a growing problem. In fact, even if we look at, when I'm at Speaker's Corner, I say, you're talking about violence. After I give that statistic of 0 to 2008, then thereafter I say, which country has dropped the atom bomb or any form of nuclear bombs? Who's done that? Which Muslim country has done that? Oh yeah, it was America. Oh, but they no, 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 no. According to the People's History of America, according to the nuclear experts and the wartime experts during that time, they said Japan was ready. They were ready to surrender. And because most of the men were out fighting, it was women and children that were left in these populated areas. What did they do? They wanted to send a message. Yes, send a message to the communists, to Russia, yes, to the USSR rather. And that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, whose effects are still felt even till today. And when you hear of all of these atrocities, unfortunately, because they are made to feel like the other. In fact, even when the whole Ukraine thing was happening, there was a famous news clip going around saying, "Yeah, but these people look like us. They look like us." So there is definitely this notion of the other, and that's why I would say that as a person of whatever belief, I think the default position we should have is when the truth of religion, of theology, of the reality of the socio-economic politics, whatever it is, when the truth is presented to you, you accept it regardless of what position that will put you in. The truth is the truth, like they say, the truth shall set you free. And yeah, I think that is very, very important, and people severely lack education. They just do not understand that. Again, we're talking about the US. The US has 750 bases in 80 countries. That's more than any other country. Their military expenditure is more than the next 10 countries combined. But yet, we believe that this guy, Ahmed, who is definitely mentally ill, he's been on the MI5 watch list, as numerous times it's been said. However, Ahmed does it. We need to change the Quran. Whoa, 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 whoa. We need to change the mosques and the institution. That this whole religion's got to change, mate. Why? Because Ahmed, the mentally ill guy, who even MI5 in 2008 in the Guardian, they said that majority of these people that commit such attacks lack understanding of their religion. In fact, Mehdi Hassan did a really good excerpt in which he mentioned a bunch of these terrorists, and before they were going, some of them were selling off their strip bars, some of them were ordering Islam for dummies. This is ridiculous. This is a joke. And we are definitely being gaslit. And spaces like this and platforms like yourself, it is absolutely integral for us to come together and put this knowledge out there, and hope that people will have and adopt the same attitude that you have, that we have to think about our kids. Is this the society that we want to bring them in? No, absolutely not.
Thank you, Zishan. Before I carry on, I just want to introduce you to Ziad and Martin, both good friends of mine. Both I have a lot of respect for both of them. And obviously, I don't know Tariq, that's why I didn't include that Tariq, but I didn't mean to be rude towards you. But I just know Martin, I know Ziad very well. Both good lads. I'll bring you in a minute, guys. But also, thank you for joining the space. Guys, if I could ask you politely, please, can you retweet the space? I'd appreciate that. I want to get as many people in this space as possible and get more people involved. Again, if you want to come up and speak to Zishan and ask him a question or just interact with the conversation, please request to speak. I'll bring you up, not a problem. You know my rules. As long as you're respectful towards each other, that's fine. Just be respectful towards each other. Don't start. If anybody comes up and even if you're a Zionist, dare I say it, because I think it's also important to hear the other side of the argument, just so people are aware of what they're saying, what they're parroting. If you're a Zionist and you want to come up and speak, you can come up and speak. But if you abuse Zishan or any of my panelists, you'll just be removed. As simple as that. But so I want to get to we're going to talk about the grooming gangs, and we're going to obviously we're not going to I think it'd be silly to not talk about occupied Palestine and the situation over there, and even the biblical story as it pertains to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. But we're going to start this thing that's constantly leveled against Muslims, Zishan, right? Is apparently some would believe, so some do believe, that Muslims support pedophilia, and Muslims I've got no problem with pedophiles. They've got no problem with having sex with underage girls and with minors, with children in general, right? This is one of the consistent tropes leveled against Islam, right? And I know it's not, but just to give you I'm going to pose questions to you that I know people that are your detractors would level at you, right? Or not just you, but Ziad and your Muslim brothers and sisters. Um, can you please explain to people Islam's position on paedophilia, and that will no, I don't want to say lead us nicely because nice is the wrong word, but that will lead us into the next topic of this grooming gangs, which has been a big talking point over the last sort of 6 weeks to 2 months, right? What is Islam's position on paedophilia, and equally your personal position on paedophilia? And I'll just say my position is this, right? This is my position. If you are convicted of being a paedophile, of sharing and indecent images of children, circulating, grooming children, exploiting all the things that come under that umbrella, in my opinion, if you are convicted of this, in my opinion, you should be put to death. And it shouldn't be controversial for me to say that, right? If you're fucking around with kids and you're found guilty in a court of law, I understand currently under UK law, they don't do death penalty. They just do, well, when it comes to people that mess around with children, they get a slap on the wrist. They'll get a community service or whatever. It's disgustingly, it's grotesquely lenient, in my opinion. But one of the things that I think we should be able to incorporate from Sharia law and incorporate from Islam and from Muslims is you don't fuck around when it comes to kids. If you get caught fucking around with kids in Islam, that's it. It's game over. It's the end of the line. See you later. Bye-bye. Gone. And I believe, in my opinion, if you truly are a protector of children and you truly care about the welfare and the safeguarding of children, it shouldn't be controversial for you as a parent, as a law-abiding citizen, to say it's game over for you. Because I believe, Zishan, right? I do believe in redemption as a general statement. I do believe people deserve second chances in society as a general statement. I do believe that some people can be rehabilitated as a general statement. But in my opinion, Zishan, like any rule, there are exceptions, in my opinion, to that rule. And the exception is if you're doing that with children, and because they physically abuse them and they psychologically ruin them for the rest of their lives, right? You may go away for 5 years or 10 years and come back out. You fucked that kid up for life. That kid's ruined for life. They may one day learn to live with it, but they're never going to get past it. They're never going to get past that predator forcing themselves on them. They're never going to get past that predator abusing them and just totally stealing their innocence away from them, right? So when it comes to, I have a very strong line on this, right? And it's for me, Zishan, is if you are convicted in a court of law, and it's irrefutable that you've been having sex. Honestly, it really fucking makes my skin crawl. But if you've been convicted of crimes such in this nature, in my opinion, Zishan, it should be game over. A bullet to the head, whatever, lethal injection, electric chair, any of the above. It should be the end of the line for me, because These children, they're innocent. See the children. When it comes to children's, Ishan, I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate as a father of myself, right? I am very passionate about protecting kids from these fucking scum of society. They are the bottom of the barrel people, right? So just to go back to Ishan, what's Islam's position on paedophilia, and what do you believe should be a better way forward for our society, please?
I think you're absolutely right. When it comes to anyone that's convicted to messing around with kids, absolutely. Death penalty, chop their knob off, staple it to their head. I mean, that's the absolute bare minimum that these people deserve. They have absolutely no place in the civilized society if we can't even have the most innocent thing. I mean, children rely on us for care, they depend on us. If there are people that will, you know, prey on that, I'm sorry, you're just not ready for society. Yeah, in fact, I barely even think that you're ready for life, frankly. Something's gone wrong there, that you got some wires crossed. But unfortunately and sadly, this is something that Ella Cobain is somebody that is an expert in this, and she's dedicated her life, and she is somebody that's an expert. So anybody who, and a lot of these guys, and I don't want to label their political persuasions, because this is something that does need to be spoken about, that does need to be dealt with, but it needs to be dealt with in a accurate and in a balanced way, and not be weaponized by certain people. And I think that's what needs to be clarified first. And that's what Ella Cobain has said, amongst others, that child group sexual exploitation, because this is the technical term. Grooming gangs is not even that's more of a media term. And a lot of these people that are advocating for this, it's good you are, but it's good to know what you're advocating for, and know the accuracies in this regard also. So when it comes to this, she says that the police has dropped the buck, then dropped the ball, generally speaking, not just in Telford, Rochdale, Rotherham, and just these places. They've been doing it in general. And the stats that she's given is 1 in 7 girls and 1 in 20 boys are sexually abused in the UK. I mean, this is despicable. The Center of Expertise Center says 500,000 children are sexually abused in the UK every year. And I mean, I don't think anyone's going to say that they're all done by these Pakistanis or Muslims. I mean, that's absolutely absurd, and this has been happening for quite a lot of time.
Apparently, Zishan, apparently you support these Pakistani Muslims that have been doing this, according to these dickheads that are saying it.
Well, you know what? For those people that actually believe that to be true, I don't think they'll be able to substantiate this, because the facts are actually contrary to this. Because the first time the British media even brought this up was in 2011, and that was the Times. They had a 4-page splash on this, and even Andrew Norfolk himself came on the newsagent saying that when people are turning this into a race issue, they are completely missing the point, and they are taking away from the true despicable perpetrators that are committing this. Ella Cobain has said the same thing, that I have worked with girls that are non-white, saying that the victims are white and the perpetrators are brown. This is completely giving the perpetrators a free pass. This is just not correct. What are you people doing? Caitlin Spencer, who was a victim of grooming, she was due to speak in the House of Lords. Before she went up, she was told, you got to blame it on the Muslims. Yeah, you got to blame it on the Muslims. And she is active on social media saying it's not just brown people, not just Muslims. And you know what the far right, because they are far right, you know what the far right are saying? They're saying, you know what? You're letting the side down. What side? I thought we were all on the same team. Where's sides coming in? That's the first point. Second point you asked, and I want to address this head on, which is that the fact that it's an Islamic issue. If it's an Islamic issue, let's look at the population of the Muslims in the UK. There's a lot of us. Yeah, and we're not just brown. There's a lot, and they're all sorts of communities. There are whites, there are blacks, they're Arabs, you name it. All different nationalities are Muslims. How comes there's only one race that's doing it? You know what I mean? And this is something that they really struggle to answer because they think Muslims are only brown for some odd, weird reason, even though the fastest growing religion in the UK and in the West is Islam. So I don't know, they've got their head in the sand sort of thing. So when it comes to Islam, I'll you'll see the same people having an issue with women trying to shake the hands of men. Yeah, and men not shaking their hands, saying it's not in my religion. You can't have it both ways, Dave. Either we're
Oh,
very
you see, Zishan, stop it. You're making me laugh, man. We're having a serious conversation, making me laugh. Stop it. Stop it.
it's natural, Johnny. It just comes out, when I just get into a flow, it just comes out naturally. But that's
Do your thing, man. Do your thing, man.
but that's what it is when they say that. Oh, it's you guys. But then on the one hand, you're saying, yeah, your women don't shake hands with us. They cover their face, and we and you don't expose your bodies, you cover up. But then on the other hand, you're saying, oh, the touching up girls. Like, make your mind up, pitch your tent where you want it to be pitched, and then maybe we have the conversation. And the conversation is exactly that. That's the Islamic principle. Now, these same individuals, they claim that they want to revive Christianity. There's, again, you look, the BBC News have got an article. The headline is Pennsylvania priests abused thousands of children. This is priests. So when it came to the grooming gangs, they never said the imams did it. They never said it was taking place in a mosque. They never said that, oh, this was done, institutionally, religious institutions were backing this. Here, let's see. The second one is France 24 News, and their headline is Thousands of pedophiles active in French Catholic Church since 1950 commission finds. Let's look at another one. CNN in 2023 said thousands of children abused by members of Portugal's Catholic Church over 70 years, report finds. Let's look at another BBC one. Spanish Church sexual abuse affected 200,000 children, commission finds. Not a single Muslim here will then raise their hands, or their fists rather, in some ape-like manner, beating their chest and saying, oh, we need to reform Christianity. It's the fault of these Christians, these cross-wearing Christians going and doing this to kids. And they don't say that. They say it's these priests, these weirdo priests, that are doing this sort of thing. Yes, indeed, they're in their thousands. And yes, indeed, there is a problem that needs to be dealt with. But never will they say every single Christian needs to now condemn this. This is happening for thousands of kids over decades. 70 years, one report found. So let's put things in perspective here. Just because Elon Musk puts out a tweet today, you put out that tweet, doesn't now mean that anytime that guy puts out a tweet of him scratching his nutsack, that all the men in unison will start getting ready to scratch away. We don't do everything that Elon Musk says. We do what is right. And coming back to the point, in 2011, the Times first brought this to the fore and got a conversation started about this. And then that same year, in 2011, a Pakistani, a Muslim by the name of Adil Ray, he was the first to do a documentary on grooming gangs on the BBC that same year. And in 2012, Keir Starmer assigned a Pakistani Muslim, Nazir Afzal, as chief prosecutor, who opened up certain cases that were closed, and he put these pedos behind bars. Yeah. In 2013, Tazeen Ahmed did an episode on grooming gangs on Channel 4. And in 2014, Alexis J, with the famous J report, she not only did a report, she gave 20 recommendations, all of which, according to Alexis J, They were ignored. They were ignored. Yeah, to such a degree, there was a clip of Boris Johnson and LBC when this topic is brought up, and he says it's a waste of money. It's a waste of money.
Let me come in there, Zishan. It's important.
Yeah.
It's an important part of what you've just said, right? I need to bring this in, right? For everyone that's first of all, I hope everyone's enjoying the conversation. I hope everyone's taking something from this conversation. I'm really enjoying it. And again, just to reiterate, my appreciation, Zishan, for you giving me your time. Thank you very much. There's a detective, right? I want you to go. When I say things like this, right, I want you to think I'm lying and try and expose me. That's it. Don't just take my words at face value, because people, that's the problem in society. People are taking things at face value and they're running with it. No, go and fact check what I'm about to say. Yeah, go and fact check me, please. There used to be a metropolitan detective called John Wedger, right? John Wedger from the late 90s to the 2000s, right, was in the Metropolitan Police. Go on Google, right? Go on YouTube right now. Type in John Wedger, right? His videos will come up. He took over. He took over like the child's unit, right, in the Metropolitan Police, and the previous person that he took over, right, he'd only come across 2 paedophiles in his 2 years. I think it was 2 years, right? Anyway, this guy John Wedger, right? These type of people, these are the heroes. These are the people that should be put on a pedestal, right? He took over this child victims unit, right? And he found 90 paedophiles in 1 month. In 1 month, right? Go on YouTube, type in John Wedger, and fact check me, please. I encourage you to, right? And watch his videos. And just to because you're speaking about people like Boris Johnson, Zishan, and about government, right? He was doing so well. He was finding so many paedophiles, right, of all different ethnicities, creeds, colours, religions, backgrounds. He found every type of paedophile you can think of, right? He was doing so well, Zishan. He was doing so well. He got summoned to his superintendent, right? He got summoned. And he basically got told off. The game of boss says, John, you're making too much noise. You're doing too good. You need to simmer down, basically, right? Anyway, obviously, to his absolute disgust, he carried on doing his job. He eventually got taken off the unit. So this guy who was doing God's work, literally, like exposing these paedophiles, and he was finding hundreds of these, hundreds. But because he was doing so well, the funding, one of his colleagues explained to him, when it comes to the police, outside of child sexual exploitation. So if you're doing you're on the drug squad, or maybe you're on the jewelry squad, whatever. Every other department, Zishan, if you excelled in that, you got promoted very quickly, and you excelled to the top. But not when it comes to finding child pedophiles. When it comes to finding pedophiles, right? You did they slammed the door on you. This John Wedger got took off the unit. He was doing that well. He got took off the unit, and they said to him, "You'll never work on this unit again." This is a guy that was actually honestly, it's like he opened up Pandora's box, right? But it came down from the top, Zishan, from heads of government. He was talking about when Theresa May was in charge, right? It was coming from government down to superintendent, all to him. You must stop now, because you're pissing the people above you. You're pissing too many people off. In what world, in what society, Zishan? I'll let you carry on in a second. In what world does that make sense to you, that the people that are above you, the policymakers, the politicians, the MPs, these agencies, why would you take him off why would you take somebody that's clearly doing an exemplary job of uncovering paedophiles, finding them, and building case against them? Why would you take him off? Why would you? Do you know what this is, Sean? They cut the funding. They cut the funding to the unit to basically to pull the rug from underneath them. This is what annoys me, Zishan. You want to zoom in on the Muslim grooming gangs. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be exposed. I am not saying that they should be convicted and have the book thrown at them. Of course they should. But you're missing, whenever the media point your nose in a certain direction, you need to be looking the other direction. When the media is trying to point you in a certain corner of our society, you have to be looking in other areas, because it's a distraction. So yeah, so John Wedger, go on YouTube, type in John Wedger and watch his. There's one interview that's about an hour and 10 minutes long, right? And he talks you through all of it. And basically, government shut him down. Government turned his life upside down, Zishan. But please carry on.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because it definitely fits in with the theme that we're saying, that genuine group based or even child sexual exploitation, whatever regards, and this is the theme. This is going to be the theme of, and I want this to be littered just in case someone joins in whenever, that child sexual exploitation, whether it's group based, whether it's individual, whether it's perpetrated by brown people, white people, black people, whoever it may be, they all need to face the full extent of the law. In fact, me and Johnny, we are unanimous in this fact, and I'm sure you guys are as well, that the current punishments that we have are simply not good enough. Somebody does this and they get slung in jail, where they get given a roof, heating and food and company and books. No, no, no. I'm sorry, that's simply not good enough. In fact, the people that are frothing at the mouth when it comes to this sort of stuff, they don't mention the fact that even, you know 16 EDL members. Yeah, because at that time Tommy Robinson had started his or was well within his EDL group. 16 out of the 16, 16 members were convicted of child sexual exploitation, and 10 of them were convicted during Tommy's leadership. These were people that had connections.
Zishan, his right hand man, one of his right hand men, Richard Tice. It's either Richard Tice or Richard Price. I think it's Richard Price. One of his close friends, right? He was found with indecent images of child porn on his computer. This is one of his close friends.
You,
But
you,
people
you're
don't talk about this.
You're absolutely right. In fact, Richard Price was convicted of making 4 indecent images of children and, of course, possessing cocaine and crack cocaine. And these vile images, they were found on the computer by police, after which he was arrested for the disturbances at an EDL demonstration. And far from condemning Price's crimes, the EDL launched a campaign for his release. And Lennon, which Stephen Yaxley Lennon, as his real name is, he himself wholeheartedly supported Price, claiming he had been, quote, stitched up, and that Price had no idea how they were on his computer. Is this you, Tommy Robinson? When Lennon's claims became untenable, he switched positions and finally condemned him. On 4th January 2011, 6 months after the conviction, Lennon released a statement attempting to distance himself and the EDL from Price, claiming that no time has Pricey ever been a leader of the EDL. What nonsense! And what is this? Regardless of where they are, whether they're in the EDL, whether they're in the Catholic Church, whether they are the paedophile ring in Cornwall, whether it's the Glasgow Seven, whether it's the Bolton gang, they should all be convicted. Unlike what you see in The Independent in 2017, a man who raped a 12-year-old girl walks free in Glasgow. And let's look at another headline. Ex-MP avoids jail for making child abuse video with one victim aged 12 months. This was a judge at Ipswich Crown Court sentenced him to 8 months in prison, suspended for 2 years, and ordered to complete 150 hours of unpaid work. Unpaid work? What is this? This is preposterous. Another headline. This is the Daily Mail. A man 21 who admitted raping a 12-year-old walks free after a judge agrees, and get this, she looks over the age of 16. Hey, judge, she looked over 16? Well, Dave, you can off you pop. Yeah, unpaid work, but off you pop. That's all right. That was the Daily Mail. Let's come back to the BBC. Teenager living in fear after rapist Sean Hogg walked free. So that's the point that me and Johnny are making. Regardless of who these weirdos, chop it off. If they are not responsible enough to be swinging that thing around, lob it off, staple it to their head, and let it be a lesson for everybody else. How about that? Yeah. And regardless of who you are, which locality you're from, what color your skin is, what religion you're from, I'm sorry, this is unacceptable. And I think the same people deserve to be brought onto the reckoning stage are those people that are trying to weaponize this. Why? Because they are getting funding from certain people. And we all know what Tommy Robinson has said, that if tomorrow, he's on film, he's on tape saying that if tomorrow there was a war, I'd be on the side of Israel. And then he answers his own question. He goes, why not? I mean, is this somebody that is putting Britain first? I think not. I think not.
Thank you, Zishan.
I have a question, if I may. In the beginning, you mentioned you gave like a kind of a history of what you consider scapegoats, and you're kind of considering that right now Islam and Muslims are, the current scapegoat in our culture. But I might be wrong, but I don't remember you actually explaining why you think that it's currently Muslims. And I would appreciate if you can get into that, because I think that just titling Muslims and Islam as a scapegoat is kind of looking at it in a very simple way, and I would rather sort of get into the reasoning behind why it's happening, in the last I don't know, extremely big in the last I would say 10 or 15 years. Please, if you could.
I think Johnny somewhat elaborated on this point for me, but I don't mind reiterating it and maybe delving in a bit deeper. I mean, one point that Johnny did mention is that the way that the Muslims are scapegoated is by the means of otherizing them. Otherizing in terms of, it's easier to say that, oh, they are of a different skin color, they pray differently to us, they look different to us. And of course, one of the main reasons that I would say that the Islamic principles, the integral Islamic principles, are kind of seen as a threat to whether it's the multinational corporations, whether it's the people that hold the power. I mean, let's take the weapons industry. The weapons industry, when it comes to that, they need an enemy. They need an enemy, and that enemy, of course, has always been the Middle East. Why? Because they are the bridge between the East and the West, and they have a culture which prevents people from these immoral practices. For example, if you look at these trillion and billion dollar industries like gambling, alcohol, sex, and the likes, Islam categorically says haram, forbidden, don't do them. And ironically, we're talking about grooming, and in grooming, all of these things are pretty much, other than gambling, they're pretty much included. So these are fundamentally principles that are antithetical to Islam. What Islam clearly rejects, punishes, discourages, whatever you want to say. And you have, these multinational corporations that literally thrive off spreading this vice, and the only ones that are true, because when it comes to Islam and Muslims, we are true to our faith, more so, I would argue, than, if you look at the major religions, more so than the other faiths, whether it's through whether it's speaking against LGBT, whether it's speaking against alcohol. For example, just I think about a couple of weeks ago on LBC, you had one of the Saudi representatives that was asked, will you be allowing alcohol in the World Cup? And he said, no, it's simply not from our culture. We saw in the Qatar World Cup, there was a big deal between Budweiser. And again, that was used as another issue that, oh, they are not like us. They shouldn't be getting involved in football and this and that. They shouldn't be hosting. Why? Because, oh, they don't drink alcohol, even though there were designated drinking spaces. No. We want to have it there, even though, it's not your culture. Forget your culture, mate. This is what we do. And you have certain people that they want to put forward, and the Zionists are big players, whether we like it or not. They are big players on the global sphere, and the Palestinians are Muslims. So naturally, if you demonize Muslims and Islam, then you naturally demonize Palestinians as well, even though there are Christian Palestinians. But when I say Christian Palestinians, people are shocked. They're like, huh? Christian Palestinians? What? There's a priest in Bethlehem, which is in Palestine? I don't believe this. My mind is being blown at this moment in time. I simply don't understand. I thought it was a bunch of brownies. Even they look white as well. What's going on here? So again, you have certain powers that it's been within their vested interest for a very long time. Like Lord Crewe says in 19, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 20, Mark Curtis mentions this in his book. And he says, and I quote, that it is within our national interest to keep the Middle East oil-bearing principalities divided. So this has, happened ever since they discovered black gold, which is oil. So whether it's because of black gold, whether it's because of colonization, of course, oil is present in Iraq, and yep, we have to demonize them and their faith, and we have to do that in order to secure the oil. Whether it's in Palestine, or we need to take over the land, lo and behold, they're Muslims, so we need to demonize Islam. Over here, of course, a lot of people, they're struggling, the government with regards to the government policies. Rather than fixing that, let's look at the other, the most vocal other. It's the Muslims yet again, and there will be other international powers that will be funding this. We know the Quilliam Foundation was Zionist funded, the Henry Jackson Society, the think tank, quote unquote think tank, even though it has the opposite effect, were Islamophobic and were Zionist. So you have vested interests because of their colonial interests, because of the economic interests, will do this. I mean, we all hopefully will be aware of what happened in around 1951 in Iran, where they had a democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, but that was simply not good enough. Why? Because he tried to nationalize and, wait for it, BP. Yes, British Petroleum. What happened? They removed him. They installed a dictator. And then ever since, Iran's been pissed, amongst other reasons. But we don't want to be mentioning that. We just want to mention the fact that they're a bunch of brownies, because it's easier that way. And it just takes, less space on the page, if we say it like that. Otherwise, we have to get into a really complicated detail. But the way we've socially engineered society is Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, Joey Tribbiani. Yeah, the dumb people are funny. You don't want to. I mean, the most intelligent guy in the group of Friends, the sitcom, was Ross Geller. And anytime you would talk about fossils, anytime you would talk about science, everybody would be like, knowledge, here he goes again. So society is continuously trying to dumb us down such that we don't want to look at the answers. We think that these things that are happening in a vacuum. But anytime we talk about foreign policy, what happens on BBC Question Time and on LBC? Oh, he's bringing up foreign policy again. Oh, lash him, mate. Well, I'm sorry, but things simply don't happen in a vacuum. You simply cannot take out Sykes-Picot. You cannot take out Berlin Conference. Please make sure you write these things down and make sure you look into this. Sykes-Picot is after the Ottoman Empire, the Middle East was divided, and you had the countries that were saying, this belongs to you, this belongs to me, and this belongs to you, this belongs to me. The Berlin Conference happened in Africa, which again, there's a famous cartoon of Europe literally dividing up Africa as pieces of a giant cake. Yeah, that's literally how it was seen. But when have you ever heard this being mentioned? Do you even know what a Berlin Conference is? No, you think it's probably a meeting of a bunch of German guys drinking beer in Berlin. It's really not. It's actually more nefarious than that. So when we actually look at all of this sort of stuff, we look at the two main borders in the subcontinent, the Durand line and the Radcliffe line, which are causing issues even till today. There were borders drawn by the British. I'm sorry, but you simply cannot take away and take out colonization from the question. You simply cannot take away the fact that, people require oil, and they will do anything to secure oil and these natural resources. We all know what happened when King Faisal made that decision about restricting oil to the West. And they made sure that after America and Europe came to a standstill because of Saudi withholding oil, what happened? Yes, this can never happen again. Then what happened? Of course, they had that petrodollar deal with Saudi Arabia, but also they made sure that they had the Camp David Accords, which a lot of people don't know, that the neighboring countries around Israel, the quote-unquote Muslim majority countries, they have had their hands tied, and they do receive a large sum from America. So this is not as simple as people make it out to be. And this is something that is Very important to mention. And I'm glad, Martin, that you directed the conversation towards hair. For the people that, of course, can handle this level of depth, for the others, of course, what I mentioned before is sufficient to kind of get you started on this ladder of truth seeking and learning more about what has happened and how that shapes what is happening today.
Did that answer? Do you want to respond to him, Martin?
Yeah, if I can, and
Yeah, no
I've seen
problem,
there's
no
many
problem.
hands, so I'll keep it short. Well, first of all, you're incredibly knowledgeable and very informative. Like, wow, that was I actually learned a lot from that. So thank you very much for explaining it in that detail. I'll be honest, as a Jew, as an Israeli Jew, I kind of, if you ask me where it comes from, I've always looked at it as a very sort of pinpoint into Zionist agenda, and you've basically given me more reasons, which I can't dispute, which seem very logical, and apparently it's a much wider. There's way more reasons than just the Zionist reason. With that said, I do truly think that within all those organizations and reasons that you mentioned, and I can name a few, but I don't think it's necessary. There are many Zionist Jews who actually are in control or have a lot of influence within the organizations, and are definitely pushing an agenda that is completely and utterly Islamophobic in nature. I will say one thing, just to sort of bring in some kind of connection, is that in Israel, they don't say death to Palestinians, they say death to Arabs. And the reason I'm not saying the whole population, but there's, when they chant those songs, sometimes in football games and in general, those extreme Israeli Zionists, when they do that, it's always death to the Arabs. And then if you take that, and in my opinion, you say it's like it's scapegoating and all that. I actually think it's also dehumanization and a way for Zionism to remove any kind of form of nationality and identity to the Palestinians, and creating some kind of legitimacy in general of being against this group of people they consider Arabs. And then within the whole context of what is an Arab, then most people, as you said, will consider Arabs to be Muslims. And when you say that there are Arabs who are Christian, well, then they're not really familiar with that. It's kind of different for them. So I thank you very much for your answer. I definitely learned a lot from that. And thanks very much, Johnny. Nice to see you, Ziad. And have a good evening.
Thank you. A lot of people say that Judaism has been changed from the original time of Moses, right, compared to now. But people say that the Quran has not been changed. Could you just elaborate on that for us, please, Zishan, just to educate people?
Yeah, so when it comes to the Quran as the holy book, we believe that the Quran is the verbatim, the word of God, unchanged, exactly the way it was 1400 years ago. We believe that that's how it is today. We don't believe that there are interferences or people have written it in their own words. Rather, it is exactly the way it was, unadulterated 1400 years ago. Now, it's all well and good making a claim, and a lot of religious people make the claim, but we do provide evidence for this as well. And the evidence, I think, satisfies a lot of criteria, be it empirical, be it logical, be it rational, whatever the case may be. And the first evidence that we typically provide is, number one, we have, and the oldest manuscript that we have of the Quran is actually dated to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which is 568 to 645 CE. And that is not in some Muslim country in Afghanistan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. It's actually in this country, the University of Birmingham, and it hasn't been carbon dated by, someone named Zishan or whatnot. No, it's been carbon dated by the University of Oxford, that have actually dated it to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. You have non-Muslims like Professor Thomas that have researched it, have verified it, and that also say this as well. So in terms of manuscript, now this is something that's unheard of when it comes to the other Abrahamic faiths, be it the Old Testament or the New Testament. They do not have a manuscript that...
I don't know if you know.
Yes,
you're
yes.
you're getting a bit of static coming in. I don't know if you've moved positions or you've walked somewhere, but you're just getting a little bit of interference. Just wanted to make you aware of it.
Oh, sorry. Is it still bad,
yeah,
or
it just happened then when you spoke. You turned into a robot. That's the only way I can describe it.
that's very strange.
It's okay now. It's okay now.
It's all right now.
But over the last sort of minute or
Yeah.
so, it's just been coming intermittently. That's all.
Yeah. How's the sound now? Is it better?
Yeah, it seems to be perfect now. Seems to be perfect.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So I was saying when it comes to the Abrahamic faiths or even the ancient religions, none of them claim to have a manuscript dating to the time of revelation or to their prophet in question. So Islam is the only one that has a manuscript dating to that particular time, and the manuscript that we have 1400 years ago that's housed in the University of Birmingham matches absolutely and has a 100% word accuracy to the Mus'haf and the Quran that we have today. So that's the first kind of leg of the argument about how the Quran is preserved. Like, that's the empirical evidence. Secondly, in terms of the live language, the language of the Quran, Arabic, is something which is it's still accessible even today. Arabic is the fourth most spoken language. Well, it fluctuates, fourth or fifth most spoken language on the planet. So when it comes to, say, the other religions and the other faiths, let's take Hebrew. Hebrew is not a widely spoken language. Aramaic of Jesus is a endangered language. It's not something that is widely spoken. In fact, it's just about surviving by the skin of its teeth. Greek, the Koine Greek of the Bible, is not something which is prevalent today. So again, whilst the other scriptures will struggle in terms of their original language, the Quran, Muslims actually read and learn and memorize the Quran in its revealed language of Arabic, Fusha Arabic. And thirdly, out of all of the ancient religions, the Quran is the only holy book which is memorized from cover to cover. You have children as young as 6. The last that I checked, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was a young girl. She was in Palestine, and she had memorized the Quran. I just sincerely hope that she's still alive and she's still there. But of course, there are many others that have also memorized the Quran. Also, children as young as 6 and very elderly people as well. So an example that typically gets brought forward is if all of the ancient holy scriptures get burnt, the the Quran is the only one that will be written word for word. Why? Because of the main reason that I mentioned, which was that it's memorized from cover to cover. You can burn the book, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers know that multiple people have tried to burn the book for whatever odd and strange reason, that they derive joy in this odd practice. But if you do burn it, even en masse, you're not going to be able to remove it from the hearts and the minds of millions of people, because a Muslim knows at least every other person that's linked to their family that has memorized the Quran. So yes, as Muslims, we believe that the Quran is preserved. It is verbatim the word of God. And whether you're Sunni, whether you're Shia, or even a Qadiani, which the mainstream Muslim populace don't regard as believers, even they believe in the Quran as well. So there's no difference of opinion with regards to the Quran, as would be when it comes to, say, the Christian holy scripture. With regards to, you've got various different versions of the Bible with different books in them. I think many people will kind of be aware of these different books. You've got the Protestant book, which I think has 66 books in it. Then you've got the Catholic book, which has got like 71 books in it. And then the Russian Orthodox and the likes, which have various other books that have been put into it, etc. Even when you look at the Manusmriti of the Hindus, even when you look at the Vedas, again, of the Hindus, there's so many different kind of versions of these. And because things have not been preserved, things have been added in, things get taken out, things are up for debate, and the asal, or the true kind of essence of the religion, is no longer there. So yeah, that's did I answer your question?
You did, thank you. You did very much.